Let me make sure my phone's muted. Otherwise, I'll get texty texts about everything.
And then Derek has to do extra editing to edit out all your cell phone texts.
I'm very
I was
popular.
commenting to Kelly about how many times in the podcast she says she has to pee.
Yeah.
Well. Hello, friends and fiends. Welcome to Bugs Need Heroes, a podcast where an artist and an entomologist team up to illustrate the inspiring abilities of insects by creating a bug-themed superhero. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Kelly.
Before we get started creating this bug-inspired hero, what's bugging you, Kelly?
I have no complaints. I feel like things should be bugging me. Nothing. I got nothing today, Amanda. Although I guess what is bugging me is we don't have a hero today. And that makes me a little sad.
What am I supposed to do on this podcast? I'm left listless.
Well, we've invited our very own hero to talk to today because we have a guest.
A Bugs Need Hero has emerged. Podcast is now obsolete. We have one.
I mean, well, I guess before we do that, though, what's bugging you, Amanda? Is anything bugging you today?
Well, this kitchen is what's bothering me.
It looks nice. What's wrong with the kitchen?
No. The dishwasher is broken. So there are dishes everywhere. And, people are going to know I record in the kitchen now. Oh, well. The dishwasher is not working. And we built a new shelf, which is theoretically a good thing. But it means there's boxes everywhere because we had to move everything. And most importantly, yesterday it tried to light itself on fire.
What? How does that... Amanda, well, you're an adult, I thought.
You'd think that, Kelly. You'd think my 3 decades on this earth would mean I don't accidentally light the kitchen on fire, which is accurate because I am not the one who tried to light it on fire.
Okay.
So Cody made nachos, and he put the nachos in the oven while it was preheating, and then he turned on the fan. And then the fan started to smoke. So then he had to turn off the fan because it was trying to light itself on fire. And by the time he figured out what was going on with the fan, the nachos had burned. So you can't smell it because we're not on smell-o-vision. But
nachos are so easy to make. How did this happen with nachos?
Well, when the fan tries to catch itself on fire, that's more important than the nachos. You gotta turn around and get them.
I thought Cody was a professional cook.
Yeah, but he's not a professional ceiling fan man.
Not nacho maker?
Sometimes it's the little things that get away from you.
Oh, boy.
So like I said, this is not smell-o-vision, but know that this kitchen does smell just a little bit like burned nachos.
I do want to mention that producer Derek just called him Nacho Man.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to call him
Man Cody Savage.
Nacho Man Cody Savage. Pedram, if you don't remember, my husband attended professional wrestling school. But I think they had some character lined up for him, but it was like a country bumpkin character. I don't know where they thought he was from in Washington, but like he says he's never said this to me, but I swear he did say this to me, that they wanted him to wear overalls where one of the overalls was undone.
Perfect.
But maybe that was just my imagination. He claims he's never said that to me. But I insist that he did.
To be a fly on the wall in your house, Amanda.
That the chaos reigns.
Joyous.
You're not the first person to accuse me of wanting to become a fly. But if I'm honest, Kelly, I think you want to become a fly anyway.
Well, we could do a whole episode on what bugs would I like to be, because there are many.
So you're going to lock it in at, if you had a superpower, it would be to turn into any bug.
Oh, yeah, that sounds perfect. But speaking of superheroes and powers, right? We have a special guest today who is my plant hero, my colleague, one of my partners in crime, Dr. Pedram Daneshgar.
Hello.
Ped, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So, Ped, you're a plant guy. Can you explain to us exactly what your title, I guess, is? What do you refer to yourself as?
It depends on my audience, actually. So, my dissertation, my doctoral work was in invasive species and forestry. So, to non-science folks, I'm a tree hugger, essentially.
Oh man.
But my title at my university is terrestrial ecologist, but I'm basically a coastal ecologist.
Okay.
So did you do work with the emerald ash borer previously mentioned on the podcast?
No, I studied invasive plants.
Well,
But
that makes more sense.
my dabbling into understanding insects' roles are mostly related to biological control. So we could talk about that because specialists, we'll maybe talk about what specialists are, but those are our control agents. Those are our best control agents.
Brief aside
Yeah.
from the recently passed Christmas season, I was trying to explain to someone what mistletoe is. Is mistletoe invasive or is it just parasitic?
A little of both, depending on where you are. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, it's funny too because a lot of things are sold as mistletoe when they're not.
This is like the tuna at a sushi restaurant thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you could just hang anything green and red from the ceiling and say this is sushi. A good place to. Yeah.
Sorry, we're watching Derek type.
He says, "Was ragwort one of the species that you studied? I want to do an episode on the cinnabar moth," says Derek.
Oh, that would be cool. No, so I studied an invasive grass that was brought over as an ornamental. The ornamental version is called bloodgrass because it's
a cool name.
Yeah. Were they trying to make it a villain? Now we're gonna have an invasive species named bloodgrass.
Yeah, but so it just like it kind of that was like a horticultural variety, and it kind of reverted back to its regular boring green version, and it kind of has been kind of spreading all over forests in the southeast, and the Kogan grass is the common name, and it was problematic because it's filled with silica and it actually lacerates the mouths of any herbivore that tries to eat it.
Oh, that's harsh.
It burns very hot. Remember in like chemistry learning that like blue flames are hotter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. They burn hotter, so in forest systems that are adapted to fire, they can't overcome the intensity of the fire that this grass produces. So
oh wow. What an interesting problem for an invasive to bring into an ecosystem.
Right.
I don't think I've heard of anything like that before.
Yeah, you can't eat it.
You can't set it on fire.
You can't set it on
fire. It's not even the color you wanted.
Right.
Truly horrible.
And for a while, you could buy it on eBay. Like the bloodgrass, you could just buy it on eBay.
Oh, no.
So.
You can buy anything on eBay.
Where all the shenanigans happen in terms of the movement of illegal or noxious,
the wild west
species.
of invasive species.
Yeah.
So, I'm not gonna lie, bloodgrass does sound like
guilty,
a collectible on like a Dark Souls. You're like, oh, you need 400 bloodgrass to make this potion.
It's like a WoW item.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna use it to improve my blood steel. I gotta put some bloodgrass on it.
So in order to control that particular grass, you have to do a bunch of different things. So you have to mow, you have to spray, you have to till. There's all these things you have to do repeatedly over time, and eradication sometimes can take 4 or 5 years.
Oh my gosh!
And it's because it's so prolific in how it reproduces. So sexually, it produces seeds. Each flower has 1,000 seeds. That are very light, wind dispersed, can spread miles, and highly viable for up to a few years, right? And then vegetatively, you can take 1/10 of a gram of root fragment and start a new plant from it.
Oh, wow. So it's really prolific.
Yeah, if you're really trying to like sticking to the theme of the podcast, really identify true villains, just study like the 10 most invasive things and how they do what they do. And they're truly just gangsters.
Yeah, as the longer you describe it, the more I'm like, well, this plant's winning then.
It is winning.
it's just gonna win the evolution pyramid here. It's at the top. You're not getting rid of it.
Well, it's funny too, because there's a lot of folks I've met in the field that their approach with invasives is they're here. Let's not waste millions of dollars trying to get rid of them. Let's just conserve the natives and make sure the invasions don't spread. So
interesting.
That's a really difficult task, though.
It is.
I feel like, well, look at this here on the East Coast, the spotted lanternfly. That went from Pennsylvania to an explosion along the East Coast in just, 2 years?
2 years,
It's really difficult to manage invasive species, especially when there's nothing here eating them. Although now birds are starting to eat the lanternflies, which we'll do a lanternfly episode at some point.
Well, the cool thing about plants is they don't move. So, so usually when you see them, if you spot like small introductions, you can deal with that quickly, right?
They're much easier.
Yeah, do it before they flower and spread seed.
Put that dome from Monsters Incorporated over the top, and then just explode it inside there.
Right.
That seems like the only way to do it. Here in Oregon, we have a blackberry bush that didn't start here, but now has become so prevalent that people forget that it's not native. Because it overtook, I think, the native blackberry. Was like, this is mine now. And once you see one little thorny, I don't know what it's called other than a vine, it's done. You're going to be ripping that stuff out for years.
Well, are people eating those blackberries?
Now they are.
Yeah. See, there's also like a little bit of a double standard when it comes to invasives, because if it generates something we want, we don't treat it as an invasive.
We don't get so mad about it.
They use the same rubric I do for how many legs to give a bug.
Right.
Which is it useful to me?
Yeah, can I eat it?
I want to eat it.
Yeah. There's like rogue, like they call them volunteer or citrus, like throughout Florida. But everybody's like, yay, citrus. So
not me.
Because you don't want citrus trees popping up in the ecosystems, right? You just want them in your backyard.
Right.
Yeah, so many people plant fruit trees in their backyard and then don't get every single fruit. In fact, most fruit ends up on the ground, making your backyard smell. So
delicious.
I'm against
most oranges end
trees.
up on the ground, actually. They deliberately don't harvest all of it to kind of regulate the market on orange juice.
Really?
What? They're creating a supply demand of orange juice in Florida?
Right. So
is this an orange juice conspiracy theory?
Orange juice?
Yeah, no, it's not a conspiracy. It's legit. They deliberately don't harvest it all.
Oh, that's fascinating.
The wasp situation in an orange orchard must be out of control, because I feel like an orange is a particularly sugary fruit.
Right.
You'd get the drunkest.
I never felt guilty about hopping a fence and snagging oranges, though, when I was a poor graduate student. So
gotta do what you gotta do about those oranges.
Friendly, but I'm not trying to encourage people to steal oranges. But
I am.
Amanda is always encouraging. Amanda's that little devil on your shoulder telling you to hop a fence and steal an orange.
Yeah.
Well,
you ever wonder why it's so expensive to go fruit picking? It's because they know you're going to eat a bunch of stuff that they're not going to weigh.
Really interesting. That's okay. So they're charging you ahead of time, like you're going to eat some of it.
Right.
So that's like when you eat the banana in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Like they just know some of you guys are going to do that.
Right.
So discussing fruit, there's a very important step to get to fruits, and it's why Ped is our guest today to talk about, and that's pollination.
This is, of course, Ped, a pollinator positive podcast, so I must ask you, are you pollinator positive?
I try to be.
Oh, good.
Well, without pollinators, you wouldn't have a lot of the plants you study, right? You gotta love those pollinators.
Right. Nor would we have very much to eat. So,
yeah.
We'd be stuck to the grass family, which is all like wind pollinated.
Yeah, I don't want to eat grass. I'm not.
I mean, corn.
Yeah, it's got silica in it. It's gonna tear up my mouth.
Yeah, that includes corn and
Oh yeah, I guess corn, but I'm not a ruminant.
Corn.
Right.
So what are
I know. Yeah.
What are some of the basics of or better yet, how would you define pollination? What is pollinating?
Okay, so pollination is essentially doing the dirty for plants, which is transferring pollen, which contains sperm and genetic information, from one flower to another in order to fertilize an egg, which essentially will develop into a fruit. So pollinators are only involved with angiosperms, right, flowering plants. And part of the reason why we have so many insects, it's directly tied to the fact that we have so many angiosperms. So in the plant world, there's the most diversity in angiosperms, and that's directly correlated to the diversity of insects.
So plants and insects are best friends. That's what
besties,
I'm hearing.
Yes.
Total besties.
I mean, so there are other pollinators that are outside the insect world, right? Birds and bats and things like that. But most flowers have, they generate, or most plants have flowers that are with intention. So they're trying to recruit one particular type of pollinator. Some pollinators are generalists, which means they're not species specific and where they get their food, their nectar, the pollen, whatever they're.
So that's like the honeybees. They're just going blossom to blossom.
And then some are very specific. We call them specialists. They have a very cool co-evolved kind of history. But what it means is when you're a specialist, if one thing's gone, the other is gone. So that's like kind of the tragic part of it. So.
Because I've heard we talked about it with the chocolate midges, and I think we mentioned it in the chocolate midge episode as well, that like there's this one tree left that the dodo bird was supposed to pollinate or something like that. And so there's only like one tree left and no one can figure out how to make it make more trees because it was supposed to go through like the gut system of a dodo first.
It's very sad. That's very, very sad. Yeah.
It's funny because they do study that stuff so that they can recreate it through technology.
Right.
So there are a lot of fruits that actually have to be digested by birds. And the seeds actually have to be scarified, which means like grinded with sand, like in a gizzard of a bird.
Interesting.
And so now we can do that mechanically, which is kind of sad, but
we're automating the birds.
Yes. We've got a bunch
got your job now, bird.
Yeah, the Gizzard 3000, you know.
Boston Labs putting together the super gizzard.
Right. So, but the angiosperms, so the flowers, like, they all have their own tricks to attract different types of pollinators. For example, when they're trying to attract bees, they tend to be in blues and yellows. And it's because most bees see in UV. And so that's the color that appears to them. Like a yellow flower appears blue to a bee, and that attracts them. But also bee pollinated flowers tend to have like tracks or guidelines to show the bees like, hey, this is where you need to go.
Come down this way.
Right. Yeah. So, and then some of them are a little like, I don't know, creepy, like plants that are pollinated with flies tend to have rotting flesh smells.
Yeah. The original, like the first angiosperms had rotting smells.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So there's one that's like called the carrion flower, and it looks and smells like a dead carcass. It has like reddish tones to it.
Is that the huge one?
There is a huge
Amanda?
one, and then there's some smaller ones.
If you knew what the flower looked like, Kelly, you'd know exactly what I was doing there.
They're just making shapes with their hands.
Like
yeah, that has a very
like,
rank smell too that attracts a very specific type of fly.
I thought producer Derek went and saw one in Seattle once.
No, it was in Vancouver. But yes, I did see a Titan aurum.
A Titan aurum, yeah.
I was not impressed. But I also arrived a few days
Nearly
after.
disgusting enough for me, says Derek, as he like drinks a durian soda.
With his beetle colony in the background, decomposing animals.
Yeah. Derek, you nasty.
Some of these big flowers are false because you're actually looking at an inflorescence, which is lots of flowers kind of fused together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when did flowering like evolve? You may not know the answer to this, because I always see like the dinosaur documentaries. I watch a lot of dinosaur documentaries, and they talk about how there's no flowers. There's only like ferns and grasses, but there's no flowers. When do flowers show up?
That's a good question. A long time ago. Is that a good answer?
Before my time.
So the thing that's interesting is all the parts of a flower are just leaves modified, right? So the earliest flowers had no petals, had nothing showy to attract. And so when you think about what had to happen over evolution, this is a little back and forth of, oh, when I had a little bit of pigment in this one leaf, this thing came along and did my work. Yeah. And so that reinforces that, right? Because the reproductive success was higher. And so it's a lot of back and forth. And so the pollinator had some benefits, nutritional benefits likely, which is what reinforced their success and it, increased their productivity and their likelihood to pass on their genes. So this kind of back and forth coevolution is how all these kind of relationships develop. And it takes millions
fascinating.
of years. Yes, it takes millions.
Absolutely fascinating.
Right, and then eventually it boils its way down to only the chocolate midge can pollinate this one flower.
Right.
Or
well, remember, it wasn't only the chocolate midge; it was just mostly.
Is there any that's like exclusively that's it? It's the only this one.
Yeah.
So, doing a quick look, producer Derek, thank you for the paper. The most recent common ancestor of all living angiosperms likely existed between 140 and 250 million years ago, which is, I think, even older than I was.
Time ago.
Yeah, I was thinking about. Definitely a long time ago.
So there was dinosaurs. They've been lying to me all this time.
That's possible. There were dinosaur pollinators, actually.
Oh my gosh. Imagine a stegosaurus, but he's the colors of a bee.
You just made Amanda's day thinking about a dinosaur pollinator.
All those plates are actually just tiny wings, and he's been flying around this whole time.
I mean, there are probably also ancient small reptile and small mammalian pollinators during that time period. Oh, Ped, well, there's a question. Other than bats, what mammalian pollinators do we have?
Other than just like cute little mice who get in the blossoms and roll around.
Well, I mean, it could be mice.
There are mice pollinators. Yeah, there are lemur pollinators.
What about a sloth? Is he an accidental pollinator?
He's so slow.
The plant's waiting too long for it to get there. That's the problem.
Because I just know that like a sloth's so slow that like sometimes moss and algae will like grow on it.
Yeah.
Oh, they have a whole ecosystem. We should talk about that, the moth ecosystem on a sloth for another episode. I would imagine shrews, maybe?
Yeah, definitely
anything
shrews,
small.
Some mice,
any fuzzy little guy that gets
little moles. Yeah. The thing about sloths and the reason why they're so slow, it's because of their diet. The plants they eat take so long to break down that that energy flow isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So it's completely.
They're just a lawnmower with that grass sitting inside of them.
Right. Yeah, it's directly related to how they digest and what they eat. So.
Do you have a favorite pollinator, Ped? Or a favorite
there's a couple that
pollination
make me laugh.
Relationship? Yeah.
Yeah, there's one that really makes me laugh. So like Ophrys orchids, they have a part of the flower looks like a female bee or a female wasp. And so they trick males into thinking that they're going to get lucky, right? And so you see these like promiscuous male wasps come around, they see it and they're like, "Oh, look, there's someone just waiting for
a princess."
Yes. And so what's interesting, so you see these males that they'll like mount them and they're rocking the heck out of this flower. And what the orchid does is it'll slap this sac of pollen on top. These sacs called pollinia. And so it's funny, and I've seen like videos of them where you get multiple males trying to hook up with this same fake
this mannequin.
Yeah. So that one's really funny, but it's interesting too, because the kind of the structure, or like the build of the orchid, has to be strong enough to like handle the weight of that insect being there, right? So if you see like flowers that have bilateral symmetry, right, that's usually an indicator that they have an insect pollinator, and the bottom part of that flower is called the keel. It's usually evolved from two leaves fusing together so that it's extra strong to hold the weight of that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I think it's
I hadn't thought about the weight before.
It's interesting to try and attract the male of a wasp or a bee or whatever, because it feels like there's not that many of them really out there, because every time we've talked about them with our bee team, it seems like they just kind of hang out at home and are like, man, when's a princess gonna show up? Oh,
well, that's the thing, is a lot of those species of wasps and some bees, like the male's only job is to mate, so they're just flying around looking for something, you know.
They go out looking, they wait for the females to feed them, and then they'll go out looking for a mate. And some of them feed themselves too, but
every time we talk about male bees, all I can imagine is like a 90s sitcom dad. You know, he's always like on the couch. He's always like, "Why are you nagging me, woman?"
Yeah.
But maybe that's my bias showing.
It's funny, when I was invited to come on, I thought we were gonna get some like a hero pair that like fit together.
Oh yeah, somehow. We thought about it, but we wanted to be able to talk about like all pollination rather than trying to single down like, oh, we're gonna talk about orchids and the simps that they attract or whatever.
It could go wrong too. Yeah, it could go wrong. So because like how they fit together could look not right, you know.
Derek doesn't like it when I use internet slang on the podcast.
He's gonna have to cut all that out.
Sorry, it's in the zeitgeist, Derek. You can't help that's how the kids are talking these days. I try to stay hip and relevant. I try to stay litty with the children.
Oh no, don't say litty.
Yeah, now I dab, which is also like 4 years out of date.
Yeah. Oh, Derek's got about 5 minutes to choppity chop right here.
No, leave it in. Let the children know that I'm hip.
Well, I think, Amanda, it would be fun if you had the time and could create a duo, a plant pollinator duo.
You and Ped have done what we call the Wolverines Don't Howl panel, which is kind of the genesis of this podcast. Like the flower, this podcast evolved forth from that original panel talk. And you guys have talked about poison ivy before on that.
Yeah, Ped gives an excellent talk about poison ivy.
So what are your fall downs with poison ivy, the plant character that already exists? Or what do you like about poison ivy?
I love poison ivy, the character, because she's an eco-terrorist, which is kind of cool. Like,
I love an eco-terrorist.
Yeah, I shouldn't be like pro-terrorist, but she mostly targets people that are harmful to the environment. But there's very little about poison ivy that's anything like actual poison ivy, right? So even the character, so Pamela Isley, who's poison ivy, she's kind of originally had an aversion to sunlight. And,
that doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, she was introduced originally to be a Batman, like sort of a romantic interest. So they hadn't.
Well, she's an eco-terrorist, but she's a lovely shade of green. So.
Right. Yeah.
And as we know, if you're a Batman fan, sometimes that's all it takes for Batman.
Yeah, and now poison ivy is basically a plant now. Like she's sometimes has a woman form, but anyways, yeah.
I believe she's cut off from her plant side right now. I'd have to check.
I'm currently reading Poison Ivy, and it's the storyline's similar to what's going on with The Last of Us, because she's spreading spores and everything.
Oh no! Because I know for a while she got cut off from the green, and she was all upset about that. But I haven't read since. So
yeah. So, but she early on it was all about her seductive power and stuff like that. There's nothing seductive about Poison Ivy. There are a handful of plants that
I had it on my arm once and I did not feel sexy.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit.
You were like, hey, check
I'm like,
out
look at this husband. Yeah,
this
it wasn't
painful blistering spot on my arm.
Oh, Amanda, you've never had poison ivy?
I've never had poison ivy. Mm-mm.
Oh,
Wow. There's some studies I'd like you to help me with then, because maybe you're not allergic.
I have very sensitive skin, so I would not be surprised if I am allergic. But no, we don't really have it here. I think we get stinging nettles, and we get poison oak, but we don't have poison ivy.
It's funny when you go on the USDA plant database. I can't tell you how many times I've seen like the range of something and Oregon is not in the range. It's so weird.
It knows better. It knows better than to come here.
You like see all the US is green and then Oregon is just like not highlighted and you're like, what? Like there isn't one? Like
no, so. We don't let it here. We only just got the emerald ash borer. We're very forestry heavy over here, so we're very aware of what's coming in and out.
So Derek mentioned that you have poison oak. So there's this whole family, Anacardiaceae, which contains poison ivy, poison oak, mangoes, cashews. So if you're really, really allergic to one, you might be allergic to all of them.
Oh, well, I love a cashew, so I should be
me
clear.
too.
Yeah. I learned that my high school prom date, I learned was allergic to mangoes because her like tongue swelled up after eating.
Well, we were talking about oranges earlier. I'm allergic to oranges, so. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Not drink orange juice is the answer.
I guess so, yeah.
But
are you allergic to all citrus?
All citrus.
Oh,
even kiwis, somehow.
That's awful.
I'm not sure.
That is
it's bad. I hate it.
Yeah.
And the worst part is people just don't think I'm telling the truth. They think I'm just being a picky eater, and so they'll add it anyway. And I'm like, no, I'm really allergic. I'm not just saying, like, don't put any lemon on my fish, please. I really do need to know if there's any lemon in this fish sauce or whatever.
So you've always had to have plain tap water. You can have like tap water with lemon.
Well, here's the extra thorn in my side. To be clear, I'm not like having anaphylactic shock or anything. I get like the hives. It's fine. And I get like a nasty cold sore. It awakes the face herpes inside of me. But the thing is, I didn't develop the allergy as severe enough that I had to stop eating it until I was probably about 18, maybe 19.
So you just kept dosing yourself until it got so bad.
Until I got bad enough, yeah. Because I ate them as kids, and I'd always kind of feel gross after, and I could never figure out why. And like, you wash your hands with citrus soap all the time without even thinking about it, right? Orange soap, lemon soap, every cleaning thing is citrus flavored. And Derek says I was a sickly child. I stand by. I'm only 5'2" because I was kind of a sick kid. Whereas all my siblings are over. Chelsea's probably 5'6", and then Ethan and Derek are probably 5'10". Oh well, I'm just just a little baby down at 5'2". But yeah, you wash your hands with citrus soap and you don't think about it.
I had the same problem with poison ivy. So growing up in the Pine Barrens, I was constantly exposed to poison ivy my whole life. I did a lot of hiking.
As the feral child that you
Yes, I was a feral little monster running through the forest with my border collie lady. And,
oh my gosh, we need to write a children's
book
series about child Kelly just like in the wild.
You can draw it, Amanda. It'll be great.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
But I was constantly dosing myself with poison ivy. It did nothing. I even like took some and put it on my arm and nothing happened. And then in my 30s, I was doing an invasive species plant cleanup at a local park. My husband's company does volunteer work every year. And I got horrible poison ivy all the way from my wrist up to my shoulder. And I went to the doctor and I said, what is this? I don't get poison ivy. And he goes, you've been dosing yourself for 30 years. Congratulations. Now you get poison ivy.
Yeah, it's finally come. I've heard that's true of like snakes. And you talked about butterflies, like your colleagues can't handle butterflies anymore.
Yeah, he used to work with butterflies and he can't now because he's allergic to their scales.
It feels like it should be the other way around.
So wait, you didn't know that you were picking up poison ivy?
Oh no, I had gloves on and stuff, and I had long sleeves, but I must have touched my arm with a glove. Like I knew there was poison ivy there, I could see it, and I tried to take all the precautions and ended up getting it anyway. My husband got a little bit, I think, on his ankle, but it really got me. The doctor says I'm probably now very sensitive to it, which is why it went nuts.
Yeah,
So,
Derek mentioned about the oil persisting. It can persist. It's very, very stable. It doesn't break down very quickly. It's called urushiol, and
so it just stays on your skin and continues.
Yeah,
to
I mean, it'll stay on your pets. It'll stay on your clothes. If you're like me, who doesn't like to wash my jeans after every wear, I like to wear them a few times, until they get nice and soft. But
that's what they say you're supposed to do. You're supposed to. There's some chart that has like how many wears you're supposed to do per item.
Well, if they're real jeans, not like women's jeans, which are like 1% jean,
1% jean,
99% elastic.
Exactly.
The biggest issue with the oil is that it's volatile. So if you burn it, you can inhale it, and that's the worst way to get poison ivy.
Oh my God, in your lungs?
You can get poison ivy of the lungs?
Yeah. There was like a wildfire down in Florida where all these people were hospitalized because they were inhaling it.
Oh, Florida.
So, yeah.
Oh, Florida.
The continuation of our Florida, yeah.
So you can burn it up and you can inhale it, and then it burns the inside of your lungs. What happens if you eat it? Or does no one eat it?
I've never done that experiment, so I don't know.
I gotta know. Someone get Schmidt on the line. We gotta know.
I imagine it would be this just poison ivy in your mouth. Can you imagine it on your tongue?
Oh yeah, I haven't even think. I was thinking
inside of your
cheeks.
cheeks.
What do you do to your tummy?
Yeah.
Oh my! You just send me to the hospital, put me in a coma, wake me up when it's gone.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with this.
Well, does I think back to Poison Ivy the villain. Does she have any of those traits? Like, she does a lot of kissing, doesn't she?
Yeah,
Amanda's making kisses. Amanda just made pissy faces.
Yeah, she's very seductive. She has like a kind of a pheromonal type of release. And there's no evidence of any plants being able to make you that.
Star Trek would have me believe otherwise. Thank you.
Oh, well, yeah. There's all these plants that, like, there's all this, like,
well, there are
debatable stuff
aphrodisiac
about
plants.
Yeah, and
right?
that's all very debatable. So.
Yeah, they seem more interested in, I think it's because pollination, people associate with as I do, with what their own experience is. So they think of pollination as like, oh, you're doing the nasty for the plants. Ooh, yes. Yeah. So
yeah.
And that's like their big thing, right? That's what flowers want from you, is they want you to come and mix their pollens up.
Yeah.
And
isn't it ironic that like when we buy people flowers, we're handing them sex organs?
Yeah.
I always thought that was kind of a funny thing.
I mean, it's not a subtle gift, is it?
No. Well, and apparently I discovered this recently. There are certain flowers that you should give to men and certain flowers you should give to women.
Oh, wow. Can you explain?
So if the
you want to give men Georgia O'Keeffe flowers.
Yeah.
I've gifted you a
she somehow made every flower look a certain way, but
she knew what she liked.
Yeah. If the flower has a prominent pistil, which is the female reproductive part of, like, think of like a hibiscus, that's what you're supposed to give to men. And women, you're supposed to give flowers that are a lot more dainty and petally and with less.
It seems like that secret language of flowers stuff where they're like, oh, a yellow rose represents friendship, and a whispering vine represents I have a secret.
No one tells like 12 adolescent boys these tricks when they're trying to impress some girl. Like, I bought you these yellow roses.
Yeah, I buy you these carnations from the Costco.
Yeah.
It's the effort. That's what girls are after. Is the attempt. But the language of flowers, very funny to me. It seems like another one of those things that we think about bygone eras. Like, we think they used to do this sort of stuff in Victorian era, and there's like very little evidence that anyone bothered with this kind of stuff. It's like saying that, 21st century was very into astrology and they all did this. I was like, yes, I mean, some people did, but like, let's calm down. Chill out.
Well, how often is the art from those eras reflective of what was actually happening?
Well, it depends on the type of art, is really the question. As an art historian, let me tell you, because a lot of times you're talking about idealized form, and you're also talking about like strictly.
Now you've done it, Ped.
Yeah.
Now you've done it.
These are one of my favorite. These tangents are my favorite.
We need to have an art history episode where I just talk about like bugs in art history. But the short answer is it depends. the very, very short answer is, was a woman drawing it or a man drawing it? Because women would draw domestic scenes that were very true to life, and the men tended to draw more idealized scenes. Like Degas was really into, he had a huge old crush on the ballet, and so he would go and paint the ballerinas. But we talked a little bit about separation of author and result. The thing that we, viewing the painting now, don't realize is that ballerinas were basically the lowest form of acceptable social dance. Like, ballerinas were basically one step above a lady of the night, as it were. A lot of times,
how did that change?
well, a lot of times it was both. It was you were a lady of the night at night, and you were a dancer during the day, because you had to get by, and they didn't pay ballerinas anything. So it changed, I think, with so many things. You'll see the change of the introduction of schools. Once you could go to school for something, it changes its social class. And when we started to view dancing as an art form rather than just an occupation. So the conversation around the oeuvre of an artist is very complicated. But for a long time, painting is just an occupation. The way that you could be a wall builder or a plumber or a electrician, although they weren't electricians then.
So was it all commission?
Well, once you hit Michelangelo, there's this one guy, I believe it's Vasily, and he's got a big old crush on Michelangelo, and he just thinks he's so cool. Oh, he's so cool. We need to talk about Michelangelo. And so he writes a book that's all about how Michelangelo is like God's gift to art, and that we all need to talk about Michelangelo and how he's really cool because he did all these things, and here's his life story. And that's like kind of cited as the birthplace of art history, is this one guy just loving on Michelangelo. And let me tell you that Michelangelo gave the guy no time of day, like, because Michelangelo was like way too good for this guy. And from there, that became really popular. And so then they started writing like, well, what's Leonardo da Vinci's story? What's Raphael's story? So that's, people start to get interested in the artist as the character behind these paintings. And that's when you stop getting these studios, because for a long time it was a master and his studio of students. And that's why you see a lot of times it's like, oh, he was a student of such and such, he was a student of such and such, because you had to go to, these worked as schools. So, oh, I want to be a painter, I'll go study under Leonardo da Vinci. And so you would paint all the flowers in a Leonardo da Vinci painting because you were just his employee. And so Leonardo da Vinci paints the important parts, usually the heads. And then the rest is all just student work. The rest is just other people. And so a lot of art history is trying to figure out who painted what part of each painting. But they all fall under the umbrella of a Leonardo da Vinci painting because his studio produced it rather than just strictly him. So
wow, I didn't know
you
that.
start getting the artist as like, I want a Michelangelo painting, right when you start to get name recognition of Michelangelo painted this. And it's important that Michelangelo did it because I like Michelangelo's story. And then from there, you start getting the, oh, I'm Monet, I'm Monet, I'm Picasso, and that's, so over the hundreds of years, you start getting artists with oeuvre, is what I always call it. Artists with basically charismatic artists who can rise to the top based on their story, unless, oh, I'm just really good at painting a mountain. So you start to get a separation of working class artists and what we think of as an artist today, which is a solo person who does all their own work. So there you go. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
I thought Picasso did most of his own work.
Picasso does do his own work. So Picasso, because he's 20th century, he's now at the end of that evolution to where we now think of an artist as a single person. So he's a single artist who does his own. He produced like something like 20,000 drawings throughout his whole life because he was a little bit of a, if you've heard the story about Oprah signing her name on a check and then no one wants to cash the check because it's an Oprah check now. And that's how she gets away with not paying for stuff. Picasso was that kind of guy. He would draw something on a napkin and give it to you. And that was how he paid for stuff because, well, now you've got this napkin that's worth $8,000 or whatever. In 1940s money. But so yeah, Picasso, I mean, he painted like 7 paintings a day his whole life. So there's a lot of Picasso work out there. But you look back at like Botticelli, you're looking at Botticelli the studio rather than Botticelli the guy.
Welcome to the Art History Podcast.
Yeah.
With Amanda.
Speaking of, there's a Botticelli at the Portland Art Museum right now. If you want to go check it out.
That's interesting.
Oh, Derek, don't you talk to me about the dang old man. His name was Jackson Pollock. And the thing people don't understand about, okay, so sorry, Derek put in the chat, who's the guy who just did the splatters. So if you've never seen a painting,
too, I think
he's solo too. Yeah, he's by 20th century. You're looking at solos. If they're not solo, they will stay as much. Like
turns out, you don't need 20 guys to flick paint at a canvas.
No, and the thing people misunderstand about Jackson Pollock, which to be fair, I still don't really like Jackson Pollock for a variety of reasons. But the reason why his work became, Banksy is also someone who doesn't work alone. He wants you to think he works alone, but he does not.
He's like Shepard Fairey. Yeah. He's like a whole machine that does it all.
Mm-hmm. So Jackson Pollock became popular because he arrived right at the time when people started talking about what is art and how does art get created. And so Jackson Pollock's work is actually about watching him make the painting. It's not about what the painting looks like at the end.
Jackson Pollock was government funded, I believe.
Yeah, he's a performance artist, not a visual artist. And I stand by that. It's about what qualifies as art. Like, if you look at it and say, well, I could make that. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point of a Jackson Pollock.
My favorite Jackson Pollock is in DC, and it's got a cockroach stuck in it.
Yeah.
Bring it all back to bugs here.
Yeah. Yeah. Pinky the Brain episode. Oh, they fake Pinky's next. Oh, yeah. Once you die, that's it, because you've created a supply-demand issue. There will never be more than there is right now.
So I'm assuming we went way off the rails. Because
that was my fault. We warned you, Ped.
I like this stuff, yeah.
So I don't know how much of that will actually make it to Final Cut, but
probably none of it. But that's okay.
Ped
got an art history lesson, which is what people come to the podcast to receive.
The long and short of it is, if a woman is painting it in the late 19th century, it's probably pretty true to life. If a man's painting it, who knows? The end. Bugs Need Heroes is created by Derek Conrad and Kelly Zimmerman, hosted by Amanda Niday and Kelly Zimmerman. Bugs Need Heroes is produced and edited by Derek Conrad. Our music is Ladybug Castle by Roll Music. All character art by Amanda Niday. Got a bug question? Email us at bugsneedheroes@gmail.com. Check us out on bugsneedheroes.com for the visual companion to our episodes with the artwork of the bug-related heroes. We also have an Instagram, Twitter, and subreddit under the Bugs Need Heroes name. Thanks for coming by. You've accidentally stumbled upon my trap card, which is that I'm a Disney adult.